All right, time to get the show on the road. A very good morning to you. It is a beautiful day in San Francisco. I hope it is a good one wherever you are. I'm sure there's a lot of low temperatures around the country still, but spring is not far away now, so hang in there. Right, that's enough of the weather. My name's Simon Thompson. I'm here to talk to you today about Meraki's cloud-managed wireless solutions. We've got a lot of useful information to get through for you today, so let's get things rolling straight away. The agenda is very straightforward. We'll kick off with a quick introduction to Cisco Meraki. I'll give you a quick overview of who we are and how we got to where we are today. We'll then have a look at the technology architecture and why customers are choosing Meraki every single day and really helping this business to grow at a very healthy speed. We will take you through a pretty extensive product demo. I want to show you what it's like to be a network administrator working with Meraki technology, and of course we will focus that mostly on our wireless portfolio. We have some new announcements that we made recently, just last week actually, for the wireless portfolio, so I'd like to run through those with you as well. What you're going to see is a very comprehensive and well-developed portfolio at this point in time. We'll have a look at the other product families from Cisco Meraki as well before we wrap things up, and we'll have an option to have a look at some questions depending on how we do for time. What I will say is that I'm joined today by my trusty colleague Supala, sitting in the room right by my side, and he is very excited at the prospect of answering all your difficult technical questions. So as I am presenting, please don't hesitate to use the Q&A panel in WebEx to get your questions down and sent over to us. We'll try and get those answered for you on the fly as we go through, and what I'll do with the time I have available at the end, we'll share some of those questions and answers with you all. I'm very happy to announce that for IT professionals who are joining us for the first time today, you'll qualify for a free Cisco Meraki MR33 access point. This is a very exciting opportunity to get your hands on some of our hardware. Always very exciting, but what I think is really valuable here, and the real reason we do this, is we want you to try Meraki out in your own environment. We're very confident that when you actually take this for a spin and you start playing with the various options and settings available to you in your own network environment and your own time, we hope you're going to fall in love with the product. And it's a very successful formula for us. We do find that Meraki sells itself very well for people who've actually tried it and used it for themselves. It's very much an experiential product like that. So we're very happy to be able to make this offer to you. We do have some eligibility requirements for the offer, and you'll find those on our website at meraki.cisco.com/free-AP. We just ask that you please give us a call to confirm your shipping information. We do want to make sure we get that access point sent to the correct address. You'll find contact details on how to reach out to us in the reminder email that you received for joining today's webinar. Alternatively, if you have a look at our website, you'll quickly find contact details you can use there. So let's have a look at Cisco Meraki as a company. And what we're looking at here is a technology suite of products that are all focused around a cloud-based architecture. Our founders were students at MIT in the very early 2000s, and they worked on a research paper there for a project. They called it RoofNet. If you are interested in wireless technology and particularly mesh networking, then I definitely would recommend when you have time to go and have a look on Google, just search for RoofNet, and it'll soon take you to the right place. Their project really involved providing a whole bunch of access points and figuring out how best to create mesh network connections between those, but also a very important part of the project was to try to manage all of those physically disparate access points using a central management option. Now, I don't know if any of you were in IT in the very early 2000s, but at that time, Wi-Fi was still very, very much a new technology, certainly in the world of business. And what you generally found was that the access points, even enterprise-grade access points, needed to be configured one at a time. You had to literally log on to each AP and configure it separately, which is obviously a very painful exercise as you start to rely on wireless more. So the industry developed a nice centralized solution using something we know as a wireless LAN controller, so a physical box into which all the APs ultimately connect to basically get all of their capabilities and provide a centralized management concentration. So that helps with deployments of multiple APs. It just streamlines the operation for IT. But what we did was a little different, because we wanted to get rid of that physical limitation of a wireless LAN controller, which is generally site-based. So if you now think about how you would manage multiple sites, and many of our customers have hundreds or even thousands of locations, how do you centralize the management for so many locations? Cloud is the answer. And so we formed a business around that approach and that architecture back in 2006 with a wireless offering that incorporated that mesh technology that was developed at MIT. And we've really just gone from strength to strength from there. The architecture gives you that centralized management point, meaning that you can just log on to your web browser on whatever device you have that has internet access, and you can see, monitor, and configure your entire network stack. Very powerful capability. It sounds super simple because we're now so used to cloud technology, but for network technology specifically, network architectures and infrastructures, it's still a relatively new approach, so worth spending a little bit of time explaining. Our portfolio expanded over the last several years to incorporate now, in fact, 7 different product lines as of last week. And so, for example, we also have switching for connecting everything together, security appliances for protecting your local area network and connecting your sites together securely, unified endpoint management, which is really for managing mobile devices that you give out to employees, staff, or students, and also physical security cameras. So a really broad range of IT infrastructure. All of it's managed through the same interface. We call it the Meraki dashboard. And so I will obviously take you through that very shortly, and I'm sure many of you are already familiar with that. Now, we joined Cisco just over 5 years ago now and have been a very successful part of Cisco's overall growth. And so the Meraki numbers are very, very impressive. We have 250,000 and growing unique customers now around the world. 3.5 million Meraki devices sold and online at this point in time, and about 5.5 million active Meraki dashboard users at any one time. So that's people connected to Meraki technology around the world. So that's a lot of use cases and a lot of feedback that we're able to gather to help us develop this product efficiently. Let's take a look at the architecture that sits behind it in just a little bit more detail. Ultimately, of course, the cloud is a concept that we don't really need to spend too much time worrying about. Think about cloud services you already use today, things like your online banking or your email. We're all using cloud services now, even if we don't think about that actively. What sits behind it in reality, of course, is a whole bunch of servers sitting in racks and data centers, and it's no different with Meraki. So we have a number of data centers here in the United States and right around the world supporting this Meraki technology. And of course, that provides a highly redundant architecture as well. We provide a 4 nines uptime SLA for the cloud itself. But as you'll see as we go through, we don't depend on the cloud for operating a Meraki network. What we use it for is for the management component. So when you make configuration changes, you need to push that down to the Meraki device themselves, the access points or the switches, and you do that using a dedicated management connection. And you can see that in the diagram on the left-hand side labeled management data. So fully encrypted, bespoke connection between cloud and Meraki gear. But the user traffic, the stuff that you generate as you work on these networks, your voice, your video, your emails, etc., that is all going direct. So it's all based on your destination IP address. That's unlikely to be Meraki. It's going to be a server, or it's going to be another peer client on your network. So that is direct traffic, does not go through the cloud. So with this architecture, we're able to scale very effectively. And we have some customers running as many as 10,000 Meraki devices, so that could be APs, within a single network. So that level to which we can take this cloud architecture and then scale to these really large multi-site businesses is really second to none in this industry. The convenience is enormous. Just imagine sitting on a train on your commute, or just being on a completely different location. You maybe don't even have your own computer handy. You can jump on anybody's computer or any mobile device. You just need your browser and your internet connection, and then you're able to start monitoring and managing your Meraki infrastructure. Now, as I said earlier, your network is not dependent on the cloud in order to operate. So this is a question that often comes up for people who are new to Meraki. What happens if I'm disconnected from the cloud? The answer is absolutely nothing in the short term, because you will continue operating exactly the way that your equipment is set up. You're running a local copy of the config on every single Meraki device within your own physical location. So it's only when you need to make config changes or if you need to monitor what's going on with that network that you need that cloud connection. Now, of course, the internet nowadays is an extremely stable resource. We don't even think about that anymore because the internet doesn't go down. It's incredibly rare for people to actually have wide area network outages in 2018. So the good news here is that cloud reachability is really not a concern at this point in time. Now, our solution is also, here in the United States, fully HIPAA compliant. That's a healthcare standard here in the US. Really can't think of much more private and personal data than anything related to our own healthcare and records of that. And so very important that we are healthcare certified here in the US. I think that's a very strong endorsement of the care that we've taken around protecting our customers' data. We're also PCI compliant to level 1, which is the most stringent level of PCI compliance. The last point I want to bring out on this slide is the convenience that you experience with these automated firmware and security updates that are pushed out from the cloud automatically. Obviously, you determine when those will apply because they often result in a reboot of the equipment, but the key point here is that it's all centralized. It's still very common today for network administrators to need to go to a manufacturer's website, download firmware, and then figure out how to get that firmware onto the network device, and they've got to do that one at a time. It could be a really tedious process, and it's still very common even in 2018. We've just done away with that whole approach by centralizing this push out of new firmware when we have an update for our customers. Great convenience that way. And for security updates, that's super important. If you think about the regularity with which we see these ransomware updates over the last 12 months, those are obviously a major concern. We're typically protecting our customers either day one or just within a very short space of time after those are announced, as soon as we're able to develop security signatures for identifying those threats. And we have a well-developed website, which is really going to help you if you are relatively new to Meraki, just to help to build your confidence in our approach. So I definitely would recommend, if you haven't seen it already, go and have a look at meraki.cisco.com/trust. So I've touched on this already, but now we're getting into some real examples, some massively scalable capabilities that we have with Meraki technology. Telmex is an enormous service provider covering all of Mexico and has some very large franchises, household names that you'll be very familiar with, operating those down in Mexico and absolutely centralizing the management of that through Meraki. So think of that as a service provider solution. We also have over in the UK, Next Retail. This is a great example because of the speed with which we were able to help that retail store roll out its wireless capability. This was quite a few years ago now, 2012 I think this happened, and they came to us and said we wanted to wireless enable all of our stores. We want to do that quickly as we can. And because of the way in which we can centralize the configuration and deployment of this technology, we don't need to pre-stage in the traditional way. It can all be set up in software on the browser and then automatically pulled down when the equipment boots up. We were able to help this retailer get all of their sites up and running within a 6-week time frame. It's a really phenomenal story. Here in the United States, very large motel chain, Motel 6, 70,000 hotel rooms covered across the nation with Meraki Wi-Fi there. And again, that's all centrally managed from their headquarters. So these are some really good examples of scale. It's something that we really are exceptionally good at Meraki. So let's have a look at why you might choose to go with a Meraki-based solution. One of the things that I think is really nice with Meraki is the way in which you don't need anymore to learn complex configuration commands requiring you to go off and do training courses and figure out how to actually convey what you want to do with your network to the technology itself. What we've done is really simplify that layer way down. We still require all network engineers to have a good understanding of how networks operate, the protocols they operate. It's all exactly the same with Meraki. We're very much standards-based. What we've done is eliminate the memory required to just remember all those configuration commands. That's what I had to do in my early stages of my networking career. Command line interface all the way. and of course you get attached to that because you learn how to use it efficiently. But it really just doesn't make a lot of sense for people coming into network management in 2018. We are very much now visual, browser-based, using our smartphones all day, every day. So we want to have a much more visual experience with our technology, and we've certainly championed that approach. We've been 100% graphical user interface since we started in 2006. So as far as wireless is concerned, we've got some really nice technology built into our wireless APs, and it's extensible as well through APIs. And I'll certainly touch on a lot of this as we go through the demo, but there's some highlights here on the screen. For example, the ability to do onboard analytics, be able to see approximately how many devices we're seeing within a given location, to be able to track that over time and provide insight thereby into how our network is being used. That's extremely valuable data to certain types of organizations. If you're a retailer, I'm sure you'll be smiling at the prospect of what you could potentially do with that information. We also have Bluetooth integrated into the vast majority of our access points. And that's a really interesting development, because as our devices become more and more efficient at using Bluetooth, there is some real potential there around integration into location-based applications. There are some pioneers who've really taken this technology and started to run with it, but it still has a way to go, I think, to become part of a seamless part of our day-to-day technology experience. We also have a lot of many years of customer experience in terms of providing great high-density Wi-Fi. So we're deployed in stadiums around the world. We're deployed in some very large enterprise deployments, large Fortune 500 companies using Meraki technology. And of course, we've learned a lot during the period of time we've been operating, so we can keep that working as efficiently as possible. Let's take a break from the slides for a few minutes. I'm going to go across to my web browser and let's get into a demo of the Meraki dashboard. And what I want to do with this is give you a sense of what it's like to be a network administrator working with Meraki technology every day. So here I am logged into my regular web browser. So I'm just using regular Safari here, and I've logged in already. So we do support two-factor authentication for that login. It's obviously a very important one that we keep secure. It is a dedicated secure connection. The screen we're looking at right here is a special one that we use here at Meraki for kicking off our demonstrations. It's like a high level before we get into the detail of a specific network. So it enables me to show off a little bit on the numbers. We have this number that I love to seeing grow over and over every single time I do a webinar that's a higher number, the number of active networks that we have around the world. Keep in mind that every single network could contain as many as 10,000 Meraki devices. So we are talking about significant scale here. As far as coverage around the world, it's also very extensive. You can see North America is really flooded with Meraki technology. It's everywhere you go now. You will see it if you look up on ceilings in a number of well-known retailers, both here in the US and elsewhere around the world as well. So down in South America, crossing Europe, very extensive there as well. Down through Africa, India, and into the Asia-Pacific region. We have now complete global coverage with offices located in London, San Francisco, and Sydney, Australia. All right, let's get into the detail on our demo. And to do that, I'm going to take us to our own headquarters here in sunny San Francisco. And we'll start off by looking at all of the clients that have been connected to our network in the past day. We are looking at a live demo here. So this is live information. You will see on some screens that stats will actually be changing on the fly whilst I'm presenting to you. And we're looking at the real data for our own network over the course of the past day. And just in the last day, we've transferred over 5 terabytes of data on our network. And that's combined both wired and wireless. You can see here is a list of our many clients, 2,708 unique client devices in the last 24 hours. And we've both got wireless and wired. You can see the ones that are online and offline. Let's play with this interface a little bit. We're going to narrow it down to just the clients connected to our Wi-Fi. And you can see that about 2/3 of the devices that we have are actually connected to wireless. And I think that says a lot about how our networks are evolving over time. Really, we are mostly wireless first in many organizations now when you think about the smartphones, tablets, and laptop computers that we're all using to do our work every day. So there's the list of clients. I'll look at this data as well for the past week. Let's have a look at that. Just for Wi-Fi now, there's the weekend. So you can see the traffic profile for each day of the week. And you can see that just on Wi-Fi alone, we've transferred nearly 7 terabytes of data. That is a lot of data on a Wi-Fi network. This list of client devices is very long, so what I'm going to do here is use my search tool to try and narrow things down a bit. So for example, I could type in iPhone, and it's just going to show me a list of all the iPhones that have been connected. You can see we have quite big fans of iPhones here, 443 of those seen in the past week alone. This works for operating systems as well, so I can go in and say, to show me the Windows clients and show me the ones that are online right now. So as I'm speaking to you, we have 199 Windows devices connected to our wireless network in the building that I'm speaking to you from right now. And you can even see that the results of the search are reflected in the traffic profile up here. Up in the top right-hand corner, we have what I call the applications pie chart. And as is often the case nowadays, this is very noisy, lots of different apps running. You can see it's trying to describe those for us. What I actually prefer to do is tap on that pie chart, and then I get this really nice drop-down list, which is very easy to interpret. You don't need to be a technician to understand what's going on here. And no surprise at all that high bandwidth applications are right up front and center. We do quite a lot of media production here at Meraki HQ. We also have a number of video screens around the building which are streaming relevant data for our employees, often from YouTube channels. And so it's not surprised to see this list, and I guarantee that if you point this kind of technology at your own network, you'll often see a very similar result, which is that the video in particular, very high bandwidth. So we're not surprised to see that way up there in terms of throughput. But let's imagine that in your own network environment, you may be a little bit concerned, maybe that you don't want to see, let's say, Netflix traffic. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you have any of that in your own business? So if you tap on the word Netflix, then you can see who is contributing to that traffic. And we have somebody here who is contributing about a quarter of all Netflix traffic on our Wi-Fi network. It's a MacBook Pro. And if I click on that device, now I get into the specific client view itself. So it looks like this client is not currently connected to our network. We can see that they were last seen on February 2nd. And if they were connected right now, we would see that they would be green here. We would also see their signal strength. And of course, over here, we would also be able to see where they were located. We have integration with Google Maps, which is really nice. So we can see not only the map and satellite view, but we can also upload our own floor plans, plot APs onto those floor plans, and then it begins to triangulate the location of our clients. Let's go back to the clients list, and let's find a client that's actually online right now. And then we can try to, let's just look for a regular, there's a MacBook Pro. Let's see if Thomas is around right now. So there we are. So we're able to identify the location of Thomas. There is the little blue dot that I was looking for. So this is indicating the approximate location of this client and also the access point that they are currently associated to. You can see there are a number of different APs here. Obviously, the roaming requirements are going to vary depending on the settings that you have on your Wi-Fi. In any case, this client's getting a great experience. They've got a very healthy, strong signal, which would certainly explain the lack of roaming from that client to one that's nearer to it. And I think this is the kind of thing which is very useful when it comes to planning your Wi-Fi network appropriately. We can see this user is logged in using 82.1x, so they're probably authenticated on Radius. They have Mac running 10.11. I forget which one that is. I think that's Yosemite, I think, maybe. And here we can see the chipset capabilities for that Wi-Fi. So that's 11AC, 2.4 and 5 gig support, and they do support multiple spatial streams. So this will be a Wave 2 client. So quite a new laptop computer, I think, and would probably be having a pretty good experience, therefore, on the Wi-Fi. And we do support APs that can support these very high bit rates that we now see on clients with 11AC Wave 2 in particular. Here we can see the traffic profile for this individual client, and again we see application detail for this individual user. This person probably enjoys listening to music while they're working, and so they also have some quite high bandwidth applications in here, but you also see things like WebEx, Google Drive. We use a lot of Google services ourselves, and you can see also that some of these are grayed out, and that's because they are not easily describable as a generic type. So if you look at these are very generic descriptions. iTunes doesn't tell me what music this person's listening to, or if it may be applications that they've downloaded, because that also shows up as iTunes. In the case of YouTube, we don't see what YouTube videos they're looking at. We're just seeing very generic information. We can't do that for every website on the internet. So what we do there is, if we don't recognize it, we don't classify it as easily, then we show the whole host name, but only to the senior network administrator. So I'm not logged in as that person today, and that's why it's grayed out for me. As I scroll a bit further down here, you can also see some tools that we have available to us to make sure that this user is having the experience we want them to have, either by setting that manually or automatically based on certain criteria. And I'll show you the policies. They're very straightforward to do. Applying them manually is not something that we would probably do regularly, but occasionally we might want to use a tool like this. And we can even use it to actually block a user from the network altogether. So if we really thought their use was inappropriate, we could block them, send them a message, CIT. They will not be going anywhere else on the network until they had that block removed. And we can also apply group policies. So maybe if they're watching too much video and it's not appropriate, then we can throttle that for them. I love this one here, bandwidth abuser. It's another policy that we've set up here to help counter heavy users of the network. So let me jump across to show you quickly how those policies are set up. It is very straightforward, and then we'll get into some wireless specific stuff. Here are the policies that we saw in the drop-down list. There's bandwidth abuser, and I'm actually just going to create a new one here and just show you where we start off with this approach. Let's call it test, and I'm going to create a schedule for this. This is one of the ways in which we can automate the application of a policy. So time-based, and we have templates built in here, so I can go 8 to 5 on weekdays. I know that my employees work a little bit late on a Wednesday, so I'm going to push this out to 8 p.m. It's very easy to manage, and you can set up multiple schedules if you need to for different SSIDs. And what we're looking at here is one of the ways to automate the application of a policy, as I said, and you can also do that based on a user's credentials, so that can be Active Directory credentials. You can also do this based on an Active Directory group. So, for example, sales will have a different experience to engineering. You can also do it based on a device type. So that an iPhone might have a different experience to an Android device, for example. As I scroll down, I've got some other controls here. I won't go through all of them for the sake of time, but I do want to show you firewall and traffic shaping. So let's have a quick look at that. As you would expect, we do have a regular layer 3 ACL-based firewall here, so you can put in your IP addresses and ports. That works really well for blocking access to devices that have a very fixed IP address. So typically your own servers in your own environment, or maybe in your own cloud-hosted environment. More deterministic. Doesn't work so well for services out on the internet. So you couldn't really block Facebook using IP. It would be really hard to do that. Because those are also cloud-based services, and they will be based on a number of different servers, all of which will have different IP configurations. So that's why we present a layer 7 firewall, much more sophisticated, and so we can go and select based on all kinds of more human understandable criteria. So a host name like google.com, you could just type that in, and then you'd be blocking everything from that domain. But we can also do this in different ways. We have some categories here that we've created to make your life easier. So, for example, I could go to social web and photo sharing, and I could then determine which of these services I wanted to actually block access to for my network. And that could be just one, or it could be the whole lot that you see in this list below. And if you need to, you can create multiple rules in there, so you can really lock this down exactly the way you want it to. Traffic shaping is another approach to keep our network working nice and smoothly. Some applications are important to us, but may consume a lot of bandwidth. So we want to try to make sure that they're not having too much access to our limited bandwidth. We looked earlier on at the fact that there is a lot of video service in use here at Meraki HQ, and if we did have a concern about any one of those video services, we could just go in and throttle that using this tool. The category that I actually like to show off in this case that I think makes a lot of sense is software and antivirus updates. So why am I picking on that? A lot of the updates that we see for our software, think about Microsoft Office updates or indeed operating system updates. Some of those are really big nowadays. They can run into hundreds of megs or even gigabytes of data. And you imagine, I'm sure, that if a whole number of your employees are downloading those at the same time, you may potentially impact your performance. So what this enables us to do is to allow those still to come through. They can be important to us. They can be important to protect our devices from a security perspective, but we want to make sure that they don't take up too much of our bandwidth. So here we have the tool to just move that slider up and down and say, okay, I'll give that type of service 5 megabits per second on my network. And of course, you can go further. We also have support for both layer 2 and layer 3 quality of service. So you can really go in and fine-tune your performance. This is important if you are relying on IP for real-time communications, voice and video. We've all experienced lag and choppiness on voice connections in particular. So we can really make sure that we get that data given the priority that it needs on our network. So those tools are built in both for wired and wireless with Meraki. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the wireless technology itself. Let's have a look at our list of access points. So we'll leave that page behind. And here's our list, 185 access points servicing this building, really high density. We're now operating across 4 floors here, and so that's a lot of APs and a lot of clients that we're covering. You can actually see here, we can sort by any one of these columns. Here is our currently busiest AP with 23 clients associated to it. And we do have quite a lot of access points in the Meraki HQ, so we have them quite densely packed in, and I'll show you how we configure those to support that, because we do have so many client devices here. We all love our tech, so we've all got our smartphones and various other connected devices in the office with us. So let's have a look at this access point in more detail. You'll notice in the list that we saw a moment ago that we have tagging, so we can help to group these together logically. We can identify perhaps by floor or by building where these access points live. That just makes it easier to look at multiple devices simultaneously that are related. Here is stats for this, and this is live data, so you're looking really at the live throughput for this AP and the clients that are currently connected to it. We now have 26 clients on here, and they are, it's a dynamic list. It's going to be changing over time as clients move around and roam between access points. But this is really where we get into the meat of it, because we can now see various other detail about our health for this AP over a period of time. This connectivity bar becomes quite useful when you look at it over a longer period. Let's look at the last month. And you can see here that whilst the AP has been pretty solid, we've had a couple of instances. You can just see there, very narrow red line. And so this is probably where the AP has been rebooted for a firmware update, or potentially it could be a number of explanations. It could be that there's been work going on elsewhere in the network that has disrupted connectivity to the AP. It could be that there's a problem with the power supply on the access point. Maybe somebody accidentally disconnected the cable. Whatever it is, what I like about this is I don't have to go trawling through pages and pages of event logs. I've got this very visual indication at a glance to see where I've had a problem. And if I go back again to the AP list, you'll see that that connectivity bar becomes really useful when you have it across multiple APs, because we can be pretty sure if we're seeing the same time over multiple access points, probably the case that we've done a reboot further up the network that has disrupted in service for all of those APs. So maybe we've updated a firmware on a switch or a security device that's elsewhere in our network, which has temporarily impacted throughput. But that's what I find really useful about that from a troubleshooting perspective. So let's just go to our access point again. So we do have an event log here, so we can see all of the the instances that have happened here. We have support for syslog, so you can output all of this data and more data level than this as well, so that you can capture all of that if you like to go to that level of detail. Location, this is where we would actually set up the AP within our physical location. And we can even put up a photograph of the access point if we want to show where it is located. That can be really useful if you don't regularly visit a site, but you're still responsible for the APs on that site. It'll just help you. It's like a memory trigger to see where that access point actually physically is located. And then we have troubleshooting tools to help us when we need those for going in and doing things like rebooting, checking out throughput, traceroute, and the ARP table. This blink LEDs one is a favorite of mine. It's, again, very useful if you do have multiple Meraki devices and you're trying to get somebody to help you on a remote site. Maybe they're not so technical. Maybe you just need them to plug in a cable or disconnect something, take it off the wall, whatever it is. The point here is that you can just set up a blinking effect on the LEDs, and then they know exactly which one to go to make sure you're working on the correct device. Very useful rather than being completely blind. Details for how we connect to the rest of the network from an authentication perspective, but also from a VLAN perspective. We do support multiple VLANs through these APs, and we can associate those with different SSIDs with different VLANs. So you can really break things down very nicely if you wish to do so. And we've got some great troubleshooting tools for our wireless as well. You're looking here at events and client throughput, channel utilization, and so on. So all of this is going to help you build up a picture over time of what is going on so that we know that we are able to maintain good capacity for our Wi-Fi network. And I'm actually going to return to some more troubleshooting tools that we're able to now include as a result of our launch last week. Let me just go across to the access control page, and we'll jump around a little bit here, but hopefully this will be pretty straightforward to follow. And what I want to do here is to show you how we get clients connected. So we support up to 15 SSIDs on our access points, and you can see we've configured quite a few of those ourselves. Every single one of these can have a different page of settings. So here we're looking at the configuration for our employees. So they join the Meraki Corp SSID. They're required to authenticate on a Radius server, and they also get no splash page, so they get straight onto their Wi-Fi network. And then there's the details for the Radius server that they authenticate via. You can see that we support layer 3 roaming for these clients as well, so they can maintain their IP address even if they're moving between different network segments. And here we can see the VLAN mapping. And in this case, what we're doing here is we're saying that people's VLANs are going to change depending on which floor they are on. And we can identify which AP sits on each floor so that we can determine best configuration there. Bonjour forwarding enables us to support services like wireless printers. They often use that Bonjour protocol, as does Apple, of course, for products like the Apple TV. It works very nicely, but does rely on a layer 2 connection. So if you are roaming to a different floor, but you still want to be able to print to a printer that's on a different floor and it uses the Bonjour protocol, the forwarder is going to enable you to get that connection made. And then finally, again, by SSID, we're able to determine more of the physical aspects of the wireless connection. In this case, we're only supporting 5 gigahertz. That's a great way to go now. We are at a stage where almost all client devices we use in day-to-day life do support 5 gigs. It is a better standard to be on if you have sufficient APs for the coverage. You're going to get better throughput on 5 gigs. You're also going to get less interference than you do on the old 2.4 standard. Think of 2.4 as really a fallback for Wi-Fi. It is one of the nice things about the 82.11 standards is that they are backwards compatible. So if you do have older clients, you can still set up a 2.4 very easily. Just keep in mind that it's probably not going to give you optimal performance. For tweaking that Wi-Fi performance further, we have here the ability to set a minimum bit rate for the clients that are connecting to this network. And this is significant because for the older Wi-Fi standards, the bit rate needed to be lower. The problem is that what that results in is that your AP spends longer talking to each client. And so if you want to maintain best performance with modern clients, you're going to need to turn that minimum bit rate up to a higher level. We have it set at 18 megabits per second, which means we can't support really old 82.11b devices, but there are now little to no 11b devices out there. It's very rare to see that being the only supported standard on Wi-Fi products in this decade. If I change this to a different SSID, then you can see that things will change in terms of how we configure it. And if this was a guest network, we would be able to go in here and set up something like a splash page. Splash pages, we encounter these all the time when we connect to public Wi-Fi networks. Sometimes it's just a terms and conditions thing. Sometimes you have to put in your email address. Sometimes you actually need to authenticate. And there are various different ways in which we can do that as well. Facebook Wi-Fi is one that we do that's a little bit different to how other vendors take this one. In most cases, you're just required to log in with your Facebook account. We actually require you to check into a Facebook page in order to get access to a Wi-Fi network. So if you imagine that you run a small coffee shop and you want to provide some free Wi-Fi for your clients, but you'd love a way in which you can monetize that in some indirect way. This is a good way of doing that because now your clients just need to check in on Facebook to your coffee shop, and then of course all their friends will see that you're at that coffee shop. It's a good way of building social recognition for your business. So all sorts of creative ways in which you can configure your technology with Meraki. Now let's have a look at some security factors. Air Marshal is technology we've had built in for a number of years now. Almost all of our access points now support a third radio built into the AP that is dedicated to full-time scanning of the 2.4 and 5 gig bands. And that it means that we don't have to mess around. That's a rather unfortunate SSID name. I've never seen that one before. Very entertaining. Somebody's got a sense of humor out there. This is basically enabling us to see the SSIDs that are visible to us, and not all of those are going to be managed by Meraki IT. And so if we see those as a potential threat to our own network, we can actually go in and we can contain that SSID, which would prevent clients from connecting to it securely. We can also automate this process. So we could go in here and put in, for example, I could go in and put in something like Meraki here, and what that would do then is automatically prevent anybody else from setting up an SSID with Meraki in the name, which might act as some sort of a honeypot for capturing clients that could be malicious intent. So we can automate that process, and that's obviously a significant step as well. Do bear in mind that the majority of Wi-Fi products out there don't have that full-time scanning capability. They're going to be doing this in what we call an opportunistic way, which means that they're actually interrupting connection to clients in order to perform a scan. By having a dedicated radio, we don't need to do that, so we're able to maintain good levels of performance for our clients. Now, analytics is another very interesting area that we're able to support with Meraki Wi-Fi. Let's have a look at the location heat mapping. And this really needs very little explanation. I think you'll figure this out straight away. It's really showing us the density of clients at a particular given period of time. We can even animate this so we can see how it changes over the course of a 24-hour period. So very useful, especially for retailers. It enables them to see, do they have a good layout for their store? You know, are they seeing people moving around all parts of the store in a positive way? It can also help you to plan your AP density. If you are finding that people congregate in one particular area, you may need to increase the number of access points to give them a good experience. So a useful tool there. And when we're talking about analytics, I also want to take you to this other screen here, which really builds up some very useful stats. Again, for retail, this is a no-brainer. It's just fantastic information to have at your fingertips. Here, what we're looking at is data for the past week for our own Wi-Fi network, and there's various pieces of information on this page. We're looking here at the proximity to a wireless network. So passers-by would be analogous to people walking past your shop. They're just looking in the window and they keep on walking. So we see quite a lot of those. That could be people driving past our office. We're not in a downtown part of San Francisco, so we tend to find interesting patterns here. Visitors, people who have been temporarily seen on our network or in proximity to our access points, and then, of course, clients that are connected to one of our APs. From an engagement perspective, we want to see how long people are being seen by these access points. Or more specifically, we're not really talking about people here, we're talking about their devices. Any Wi-Fi enabled device could be potentially counted here, and so it's completely anonymized data, and we're just using this to see what kind of densities we experience. In this case, with engagement, we're seeing how long they have spent in a particular location, and then with loyalty, we can see how frequently they return. So with, of course, most employees being working here Monday through Friday, daily and weekly are both very high counts for this one at Meraki. And by the way, there's an API for all of this data, so you can actually get it integrated into external analytics solutions. And you could even build a relationship between a device and a client through a CRM database, enabling you to better engage with your customers. So there's a lot of potential here. It's a topic which would take us longer to really go through and give and do justice to. Let's have a look at the radio settings. This is where we get into the real hardcore of configuring our APs for different environments. So this is our list of all of our APs, and we can see that we're using automated power here, and we're also using automated channels. The reason that we do this is because we actually have a great benefit with Meraki. All of these APs being cloud managed, they are providing data back to the cloud at all times around how much interference they're seeing and where that interference is coming from, what channels it's coming from. And that enables the access points to therefore be automatically reconfigured to use an optimal channel balance. And we don't do this without manual intervention, because we don't want to throw clients off. If you change channel on an AP, you will disconnect all the clients, and that's obviously not desirable during the workday. So any time we do that is if the capacity of the AP goes above about 90%, at which point it's totally saturated and people will be having a very poor experience. So at that point, we're going to automatically change it. Otherwise, you just go in and auto-update channels by clicking this button, and it will use the information that it's learned about all the different interference levels for all the different APs to make sure that channels are balanced appropriately. You can configure things manually as well. We have it all set on auto right now, but if you need to, and this is sometimes desirable in more difficult to cover areas, you can go in and tweak both channel and power levels. Channel width is a significant one. If you are deploying in a high density setting like the Meraki headquarters, a narrower channel is actually a better way to support more clients at a good level of performance. We now have the capability to support 160 megahertz wide channels, which means great throughput for a relatively small number of client devices. So it's always a trade-off. We're dealing with the laws of physics here, but these tools allow you to really tweak things to your own advantage. The last thing I want to show you on the demonstration today is actually brand new technology we call Meraki Wireless Health. We just introduced this last week. It is in development right now, so it's not something that you're going to be able to play with just yet, but we'll be rolling this out to beta customers towards the end of this month, and then we'll be trying to get this out to all of our customers as soon as possible. It's included in the license with Meraki, so that's obviously significant. Let's dive in here and have a look at some of the detail. What we're interested in here is establishing the end user experience. So we're going beyond just setting up a network, but we actually want to understand what's going on with it. So here, for example, we've got an access point where we have a client that has failed to connect to the Wi-Fi network for some reason. And we can go in and troubleshoot that in more detail. So if we look at the Connections tab, we can look at the stats and see where people are having issues. Authentication is a common issue for client connectivity. And so if you are unable to either reach your authentication server, or if the authentication server is busy and therefore reacts very slowly and times out, these are all going to impact your perception of your Wi-Fi experience. And often, of course, end users, especially less technical end users, will just see this as a problem with the Wi-Fi, and that's how they will describe it to the IT team. What this tool enables the IT team to do is to drill down and understand where the problem may actually lie. So here we've got a potential problem with our authentication server. We might need to look at how we have that configured. And then once we have clients connected, then we can also look at the experience that they are having. So we can look here at latency by traffic type between the access points and the clients connected to our network. So again, if we are dealing with quality of service, and you'll recognize these buckets, they are broadly taken from the quality of service approach, then we want to make sure that in particular voice and video traffic, we should be eliminating as many of these oranges and reds as we can, so that we're providing as good level of performance and throughput as we possibly can. So that's very exciting new technology. We can even break it down by device type. So if you're heavily reliant as a business on iPads, maybe for point of sale in retail, then we can provide that level of detail there as well. Okay, well, that was a pretty long demo. Let's get back to the slides and we'll wrap things up. Let's have a look at the products. So we're obviously focused here on the APs. And so here we can see we have great support for both indoor and outdoor access points, all the way from small hospitality units designed for hotel or dorm room deployments, right the way through to the MR53 in the lower right-hand corner, which is our sort of flagship access point, providing multi-gigabit performance to really support those very high levels of throughput that we can achieve with 11AC Wave 2. And we have a range of outdoor APs as well, with modular antennas attached to those, right the way, again, up to multi-gigabit 11AC Wave 2 performance there. Last week, we made a very significant announcement enhancing our portfolio even further. Quite a lot of new products, and so new that we haven't even had time to build them into our webinar deck yet. So what we've done instead here is provide you with a summary. All the information is on our website, but we have now indoor access points with external antennas as well. So that means that if you're providing more dedicated coverage, maybe you only need to cover a certain area, so you might want to use a patch antenna rather than an omnidirectional antenna. We wanted to make that possible for our indoor customers as well as outdoor. So we've introduced not just new APs, but also a whole load of new antennas, which can be automatically detected by the access point and auto-configured that way. So some really nice new capabilities. And if you head over to our blog, you can read all about our announcements. And of course, the new products are on our website as well. I touched on wireless health. We looked at that just a moment ago. This is really all about ensuring that once you've set up your Wi-Fi network, your clients are getting the experience that you expected them to have. So we think of this as what Cisco calls network assurance. This is a really nice example of that actually brought into practice with Meraki. The Wi-Fi from Meraki is part of a broad IT stack. And the beauty of this, you may have spotted this in the demo just now, is that we have a lot of different products all managed through the single interface and the single login. So you just connect one time and you have access to all of this infrastructure that you're seeing on the screen in front of you here. We are continuing to look at new technology that we can do. Feel free to give us your feedback on what you think we should do next. But it's a very exciting world here at Meraki as we develop new capabilities and we disrupt existing approaches. So security cameras was our most recent introduction. Really a very different approach that we've taken there. So even if you're not looking at security cameras right now, it is an IP-based product, and so there's really no reason why you don't incorporate that into your overall IT planning. Definitely worth taking a look at there. Now, in terms of next steps, we really want to continue this conversation. We're going to give you that free access point, but we really want to engage with you a little bit more because we're very confident that you're going to love the technology that we have to offer you. So obviously, we'd love to get you subscribed to our blog. This is a great place to find out what's new at Meraki. We update that pretty regularly. And we also want you to trial our equipment. So you can go beyond your free AP and try anything from our portfolio absolutely free of charge. We'll ship it in both directions at our own cost. So you really have a zero risk option available to you there. And then last but not least, we would love you to join the Meraki community. This is where you'll find end users like yourselves talking to each other about how this technology works, supporting each other through challenges, and it's a really great resource which is just growing in value all the time. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation. Supala has been tapping away furiously over the past hour, so it looks like you've been asking a lot of questions. I'm very grateful to you for that. Let me have a quick scan through here. We've only got a couple of minutes. I'll just have a look at some of the prevalent questions that have come in here. So bear with me a second. So there's a question here about deploying Meraki technology like an access point at a remote office and then connecting it in, and will it then look like it's part of a regular network? Absolutely yes. So you don't need to set up a VPN to connect to that technology in your remote office. If you simply put your AP up on the wall, connect it up, the way that we group it and make it part of our network is by simply using its serial number. And we can then collate those serial numbers together, and regardless of their physical location, they become a part of our network. So when we make a configuration change, we are able to make that very efficiently across multiple sites. So there's a question about any changes that have happened to the Meraki portfolio as a result of our merger with Cisco. I would say relatively little. We have been given the mandate by Cisco to continue operating our own way of doing things, which is a little different to the traditional approach. So we have our own group of engineers here who are developing new technologies and features at a very rapid pace for Meraki technology specifically. However, there are some really nice technologies that Cisco have that we've incorporated, things like broader policy engines. Some of you may know about Cisco ICE. So we have integration of that there. We also have some really nice integrations around Cisco's partnership with Apple, which has helped us to improve the roaming capability for, in particular, iOS clients that are joined to the Meraki Wi-Fi. So there's definitely some examples there, and we'd love to hear your feedback about where you think we should take the product from here. Somebody's asked about the Make-A-Wish button. Let me show you that quickly. This is something I absolutely love about working with Meraki. Try and put myself in your shoes as a customer. You can provide direct feedback on every single dashboard page in this way. So you come straight in here and you can just tap in anything you like. We have seen, trust me, every single wish that you could possibly think of, but there's going to be more. So you're going to have some great ideas, and this helps us. Our engineers see every single one of these wishes as they come in. And what we generally do is help to identify patterns of requests. So if we see a number of our customers requesting the same kind of development on a particular dashboard page, then we will absolutely do that. It's all about being as responsive as we can to you. Great question. Okay, I'm going to wrap things up now. I'd like to thank you very much indeed for your time and attention. I have spoken at very rapid speed. I think I maybe had too much caffeine this morning, but I hope you've been able to keep up and that you found it a useful session. We would love to continue that conversation, as I said earlier, so please do reach out to your Meraki rep and let us know what you think, and we'll get you connected with some Meraki technology as soon as we possibly can. We'd love to welcome you back on another one of our webinars. We have many of those covering our whole portfolio. But for now, from Supaliv and myself, we'd like to wish you a very enjoyable rest of your day, and we will speak to you again, hopefully, very soon. Bye-bye for now.